Do you want a slick third-person camera in Unity 6 with zoom, smooth features, and mouse rotation? In this video, we're building on the Unity 6 input system tutorial we did earlier and taking things up a notch. We're setting up a full third-person camera controller using Cinemachine and the new input system, including mouse and gamepad support. By the end, you'll have a fully working camera rig that orbits, zooms, and syncs with player movement. If you guys like tutorials like this, hit subscribe. I post Unity tutorials like this every week. Thanks. This works in any 3D core project. I've got a simple scene with a capsule and movement script, but you can use your own or download mine below. The first thing we're going to do is install Cinemachine. So we'll go to Window, Package Manager, click on Unity Registry, and then type in Cinemachine. You should see Cinemachine 3.13. That's the current version as of this recording. So let's hit Install. Let's close the Package Manager, and now in our hierarchy window, we'll right-click, we'll go to Cinemachine, and we'll add a Cinemachine camera. We'll call this Third Person Cam. Okay, in our third person camera, the first thing we're going to do is assign the player to the tracking target slot. So that makes sure that the camera will follow the player. The next thing we'll do is go to Position Control, select OrbitalFollow, and then go to Rotational Control and select Rotation Composer. Once you've done that, you'll see that in the Cinemachine OrbitalFollow component, there's a box to add an input controller. Let's go ahead and add the input controller here by clicking the button. At this point, you should be able to play and rotate around your character. So we're able to rotate with our mouse, right and left, up and down. You can see as you go down, we clip through the ground plane. There's an easy way to fix this by going to the vertical axis under the Cinemachine camera, and under range, set it from -10 to 0. Trying to move down will not clip through the ground anymore. So you can see we've already got a pretty good camera controller set up in just a matter of seconds. Okay, now we're going to add the ability to zoom in, both with our mouse and with a gamepad. So I'm going to go to my Player Controls Input Actions asset. If you're following along, you should have this file already. If you're not, you're going to have to create it on your own. So I'll double click it. I will add a new action map, and I'm going to call this Camera Controls. And then under Actions, I will rename the new action that's already there and call this Mouse Zoom. Okay, now I'm going to add a new action. The action is going to be called Mouse Zoom. And I'm going to change the action type from button to value. And I'll change the control type to vector 2. I'll expand the mouse zoom, and I want a new binding to bind to the scroll wheel of the mouse. I'm going to select the path dropdown, and I'm going to click on mouse and scroll. Next, I'll add a new action. I'll call this one Gamepad Zoom. Gamepad Zoom action type will be value as well, and in this case we're going to make it a control type of axis. I'm going to delete the default binding, and I will create a new binding. This will be a positive negative binding, or 1D axis. I'll expand the 1D axis, and I will select the negative. I'll select the path, and I'll hit the listen button. On my controller, I'm going to hit the left bumper. You can see left shoulder gamepad. I'll select that. Now I'll select the positive binding, and I'll do the same thing. Drop down path, hit listen, hit the right bumper, and select right shoulder gamepad. The show derived bindings will show you all the different controllers that bumper will control now. This input system will work for all of these different controllers by default. Now that we've got that done, I'll hit Save Asset, and I'll close this. Now we're going to add this input a different way for our camera controller to use. Instead of using Unity events as we did in the input tutorial previously, I'm going to generate a C# class. So with your Input Actions asset selected, go to the Inspector window and check the Generate C# class box, and then hit Apply. So now I'm going to create a new script, but before that I'll create a folder for scripts. So in my project window, I'll right click on Assets, Create Folder, give it a name Scripts, and then I'll drag in my previous script, Player Controller, into the Scripts folder, and I will right click on Scripts, hit Create Mono Behavior. I will name this mono behavior Third Person Camera Controller. Let's double click this to open it. So we're going to add some exposed fields for the inspector. First we'll start with a serialized field, and it's going to be a private float zoom speed, and we'll set that to 2 by default. Another serialized field, private float zoom lerp speed, we'll set that to 10 by default. Another serialized field, private float min distance, we'll set that to 3 by default. And another serialized field, private float max distance, and we'll set that to 15 by default. Now the zoom speed is the speed at which you will zoom in and out of your player. The zoom lerp speed is the smoothing that happens as you move closer or farther away from your player. The min distance is how close you can get to your player, and the max distance is how far you can get from your player. All right, now we're going to create some private variables. The first one will be private player controls. This is a reference to the player controls input assets file. Private Cinemachine camera, we'll call that cam. Next, we'll add a private Cinemachine OrbitalFollow component. We'll call this orbital. And then private vector2 scroll delta. This will store the difference in our scroll as we move the middle scroll wheel on our mouse or tap the bumpers. Then we'll add a private float target zoom and a private float current zoom. Now these two properties are important for zooming smoothly in and out of our player. In our start, we'll want to create a new controls reference. We'll set it equal to new player controls, open and close paren. We'll say controls.enable, open close paren, and then controls.cameracontrols.mouseZoom.performed. So anytime the scroll wheel is pressed, we want to call a method called handle mouse scroll. And I'm going to hit control period while I have the cursor on handle mouse scroll. I hit control period. You can also right click and go to quick actions, and it's going to offer you some quick actions you can do. I'm going to hit generate method. So that creates a method here with the right signature for this performed action. So you can see we've got an object here. I'm going to rename that to context, and I'm going to remove this throw new not implemented exception. For the mouse scroll, we're going to set scroll delta equal to context dot read value vector2 open and close paren. And if you want, you can also debug.log $mouse is scrolling, and then maybe you want to output the value. So let's say context, or we'll say scroll delta. Now let's go ahead and handle gamepad zoom. All right, let's go back up to our start method, and we'll add a cursor.lock state equals cursor lock mode.locked, and that will hide our cursor when our game is running. We'll get a reference to our camera. Get component cam equals get component Cinemachine camera, open and close parens, and then orbital equals cam.get component, and we want to get our Cinemachine OrbitalFollow component, open and close parens, and then we're going to initialize our target zoom equal to our current zoom equal to our orbital dot radius. So now we want to update our camera position based on any scroll action that happens. So we're going to say if scroll delta dot y does not equal 0. All right, now we want to check if our orbital is not null, just in case we missed some kind of assignment. So in this check, we're going to set our target zoom equal to mathf.clamp. We want to keep our target zoom between our min and max distances. Orbital.radius minus scroll delta.y times zoom speed. So we want to check and make sure our new incoming distance fits within our min and max settings. So then we're going to add comma, and we're going to say min distance and another comma and max distance. Now we're going to set our scroll delta equal to vector2.0. That way we zero out any scroll information that came through now that we've already acted on it. So then we'll go down. Okay, after our if statement, we'll go ahead and add current zoom equals mathf.lerp. Now this will smooth out any zoom that's happening. We want to lerp between our current zoom and our target zoom over time.delta time times our zoom lerp speed. And then finally we'll set our orbital.radius equal to our current zoom. Now we haven't set up the gamepad yet, but we'll do that after we test the mouse zoom functionality. So let's go back to Unity, and once we're in Unity, we're going to select our third-person cam in our hierarchy, and we'll drop our third-person camera controller onto the hierarchy stack. So now let's go ahead and hit play, and I'm going to scroll the middle mouse button now. Okay, so that's max distance, and that's min distance. Hit escape to show your mouse cursor again. Next thing we're going to do is go back into third-person camera controller, and we're going to add logic for our gamepad. So we'll go into the update. After the closing brace on our if statement, we're going to add the following. Float bumper delta. So this is going to get the bumper input controls dot camera controls dot gamepad zoom dot read value, and we're going to read a float. So the 1D input is going to give us the difference between the left and right bumper. So if you have left pressed and no right, it's going to be -1. If you have right pressed and no left, it'll be +1. If you have both pressed, it'll be 0. And if you have none pressed, it will also be 0. So as we did before, we're going to check if our bumper delta is not equal to 0. There's no reason to act on it if we don't have any input. And then inside of our braces, we'll say target zoom equals mathf.clamp orbital.radius minus bumper delta times zoom speed, comma min distance, comma max distance, close. And that's all we need to do for our bumper input. So let's go back to Unity and test that now. Okay, so I have my gamepad, and with the left joystick, I can move the player. With the right joystick, I can move the camera. Now with the left bumper, I can zoom out. With the right bumper, I can zoom in. Okay, now we have to make an update to our player because you can't see this, at least not in the game window. But if you look in the editor, you can see that as my player is moving around, it's not actually rotating. First thing I'm going to do is add a little object for a nose. So I'll right click on the player in the hierarchy. I'll go to create 3D object, and I'm going to try and make a little capsule. So I'll make the capsule, I'll set the scale in both X, Y, and Z to 0.25. And then I'm going to go into my editor window, the scene editor, and I'll hit F to zoom in on the capsule. And now you can see there are 3 axes. There's a green, red, and a blue, which correspond up here to the X, Y, and Z. Now I want to move my capsule out on the Z. So that gives me a position for the front of the player, or what would be the face. So that we have that kind of nose structure there. So we want the nose to face the direction the player is moving at any given time. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on the player controller now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a reference, a serialized field at the top, and it'll be a reference to the camera's transform. So it's going to be private transform, camera transform. And actually I can make this C lowercase. So camera transform will be a reference to the camera's position in space, position, rotation, and scale in space. And then I'm going to add another serialized field, and I'll call this a private bool should face move direction. And we'll set this to false. Okay, now we'll go down to our update method and we will rewrite some of this. I'm going to add some new lines here. Okay, I'm going to start by adding a vector 3 and I'm going to call it forward. I'm going to set it equal to the camera transform dot forward. And then I'm going to create another vector 3. I'm going to call it right and set it equal to camera transform dot right. Then I'll take the forward dot y and set it equal to 0, and the right dot y and set it equal to 0 as well. Then I will normalize both forward and right. Now I'm going to add a vector 3, move direction, and I'll set it equal to forward times move input dot y plus right times move input dot x. Now I'll say controller dot move direction times speed times time dot delta time. Okay, so now we will update the rotation of the player based on the move direction. So if we have should face move direction checked and our move direction square magnitude is greater than 0.001, which means that we're moving, then we want to set a quaternion to rotation equal to quaternion dot look rotation move direction vector 3 dot up, and then transform dot rotation equal to quaternion dot slurp dot transform dot rotation to rotation 10f times time dot delta time. Now we can delete the following lines, the vector 3 move and the controller dot move, and we'll leave these bottom lines which handle jumping. Let's save, Control S, and I'll go back to Unity. So I'm going to drag the player material, which for some reason didn't end up working when I dragged in my input starter scene. I'm going to drag it back onto the player. I'll grab the ground material and drag that back onto the ground. And that'll just let me see a little better. After I've added the materials, I'll select the player and I will go to the player controller. So in the player controller, there's a slot for a camera transform. Let's drag our third person camera into that slot. And now let's hit play to test. So I'm currently using my mouse and keyboard. I'll double click on the game tab to make that full screen. Okay, now I'm going to hit WASD and move around. So you can see the player is not rotating. Then I'll go to my player. I'm going to check off should face move direction and I'll hit play. So now I'll double click on the game window to make it full screen again and I'll press W. And I'll move to the right. Moving to the back, and you can see my player is now rotating around with movement, and it's also moving relative to the camera. So if I look this way and hit W, it now moves that way. If I look this way and hit W, it moves that way. As I rotate the front of the player is rotating with the camera. Now I'm going to try this with the gamepad now. Okay, I'm going to use left joystick. And that works well. And then I'll use the right joystick. You can see that's working well. But at this point, you now have working third-person camera with gamepad controls and mouse and keyboard controls. That's it. You got a fully working third-person camera with rotation, zoom, with keyboard, mouse, and gamepad using Unity 6 and Cinemachine 3.13. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can download the completed Unity project below. If you're interested, I've also got a link to my Unity 101 Bootcamp waitlist in the description. It's a great starting point for beginners to make complete Unity 3D games. Also, support me on Patreon if you like my content, and subscribe for more Unity content every week. If you have any suggestions for tutorials you'd like me to make, post them in the comments below.